Hey, I'm Jay Burney,
I'm Bill Siener.
and we're here today at St. Paul's Cathedral in downtown Buffalo for a very special show. Why don't you tell us about it?
Homelessness is a growing problem in Buffalo and all across the nation. We wanted to draw attention to that. The cathedral actually has ministries that feed homeless people 5 days a week. And we want to draw attention to the entire problem. So local photographer Joe George has made 23 beautiful portraits of street people in Buffalo that we interviewed. And we have an exhibit inside the cathedral that's open 3 afternoons a week, Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday from noon to 2, to draw attention to the issue and to show people who are living on the street with a great deal of dignity and humanity and personality.
Well, let's go and see this photo exhibit, Bill.
Okay. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Bill.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
We just want to introduce the broader public to our show.
Great.
The one that you did such great photographs for.
We did such a great show.
We worked on it together for a long time.
Yeah.
With a couple of false starts, but
Yeah.
finally we got it going.
Right.
And we've called it, And Who Is My Neighbor? So do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. Well, I'll just say how this all started. So my name is Joe George, and I am a recently retired lifelong chef, but my passion for the past many years has been photography. And but some of my photography is on the street where I meet people who live on the street and offer them gift cards to get something to eat. And the gift cards are not from me, they're from people who donate them to me. And it's become what I call my gift card ministry. And I post them sometimes on social media, not so much anymore, but I still do. And that's how Bill and I had met. A few years ago, pre-COVID, I think, was it? Yeah. Bill had contacted me regarding to do a project like this, and we talked about it, and then COVID hit, and we never followed through. And then after COVID, I was actually hired to photograph an event here at the church, and Bill approached me there, and we started talking again. And after many coffee meetings, we finally got it done. We would meet for coffee and talk about the project, what we need to do, and then eventually the two of us would go out in the street around the church here, Cathedral Park downtown near Fireman's Park, in my neighborhood in Allentown, where probably about half the people photographed here are from, and introduce ourselves, and I would engage them and photograph them. Meanwhile, Bill would be speaking to the next person in line to ask them questions about their story and their name, and then of course they had to sign a release form so that they all knew they were being photographed and we were going to use the photographs for this exhibit. And basically I think we really wanted to bring awareness of the plight of homelessness in America, and that everybody is equal, everybody has worth. And this is also where we, both Bill and I are people of faith. Obviously, we're in a church. The show is in a church, and this is also where we came up with the And Who Is My Neighbor theme, which is in the Bible, of course, because everybody is our neighbor.
I'd add that it's in the story of the Good Samaritan, which is a story about a man not of the, shall we say, the in group, who gets beaten up on the road, and someone who normally would have been thought of as a neighbor comes and, or someone who is normally thought of as an enemy comes along and helps the man who's been beaten up. And at the end, the question is raised in the parable, and who is my neighbor? And the young lawyer who is originally raised the question says, well, the person who offered help.
Right.
So,
What I would just like to add, what I like personally about that parable is the person who was offering help to the beaten man asked for nothing in return, and he offered his own money to help this person just because he was in need. And as Bill says in there, the story revolves around a wealthy lawyer asking what it would take to get to heaven, and Jesus replies, or he asks him, and the lawyer says, "Love your God as all yourself, and your neighbor as well." And that's when the lawyer says, "And who is my neighbor?" He needed clarification.
So these are our neighbors, and there are 23 portraits here of some of our neighbors. And Joe, the other thing you've said to me often is that in the years you've been doing this sort of work, that people often respond to you that they're so glad that someone has seen them, that they often felt unseen.
Yeah, I'll give an example of that. Just yesterday, I was on Allen Street, and as is often the case, I was walking with a camera in my hand, and a guy who was not part of this, who I had met before, asked me for a card, and as I was reaching for the card, he said, "You want to take my picture?" And I said, "Sure." So as I was getting ready to take his picture, another guy who's over here, Joel, his name is, I know him as Joey, was across the street, and he saw me and came running over yelling, "Wait, I want to be in the photo too." And they just wanted their pictures taken. You know, I think, as Bill had said, I really think that people want to be seen, want to be known. One of the things that people on the street have told me is one of the worst things that happens is they feel invisible. You know, they may ask for money or just be sitting there, and people walk by as if they don't exist. They don't see them. You know, so I think being visible and being engaged in conversation as just a normal person like you and I is a big deal.
Well, let's go look at some of the portraits.
So we wanted to show you some of our neighbors here that agreed to have their photo taken and be part of the exhibit. One is this gentleman here. What's interesting about him is that he's been on the street for a while, and I'd just like to add that often it's a misconception that people are on the street. You know, you hear people say they're lazy, or they're drug addicted, or alcohol addicted. I'm sure sometimes that is the truth with the drugs and alcohol, but that is often the outcome of being on the street, almost like a balm to the situation. And a lot of times you'll meet these people, and like this young man, for example, I do not know why he's on the street, but what keeps a person from having a job in a house is not always visible. You don't know it all the time. And he's an example because he's a nice young man. He's always very friendly to me. But why I wanted to talk about him is that a lot of these people get hooked up with agencies, and he recently has been hooked up with an agency, and he got a apartment, and that's the first step to becoming employed, because how could you become employed if you're living on the street? How could you ever apply for a place and they ask for an address or anything like that, and you're living on the street, you have no place to shower and all this type of thing. So anyway, he's a good success story. I haven't seen him recently because as far as I know, he's got his apartment, and I'm hoping he's got a job by now. This guy he's an artist. He goes by the name Seven. I doubt if that's his real name, but you can see by his smile that he's always very gregarious. I've seen him a few times after this, and he showed me various artist things that he's done, including he does face painting on himself and others. And one, he showed me his face. I thought it was all tattoos. It was real intricate. It took hours to do. But yeah, and Bill, did you want to talk about these two?
Yeah, the two folks up here are a married couple, and they were on the street because they were flooded out of their home in West Virginia, and they came to Buffalo to be nearer relatives, and were living under the on-ramp to the Skyway, where they got around by bicycle. And the last time I saw the wife, she said they'd gotten back on their feet enough to go back to their home in West Virginia, which was another lovely success story. As part of the Cathedral's outreach to homeless people, we offer one day a week. Archdeacon of the diocese is a retired art teacher, and she offers art classes. And one of our regular neighbors has enrolled in the art classes and is participating in that as a bit of self-help too. So these are not lazy people to be dismissed. They are people who want to be not only seen, but be creative and do the things all of the rest of us want to do.
One thing I'd like to add to piggyback what Bill had just mentioned, I have a postcard I purchased in Toronto quite a few years ago, probably 20 years ago. I still have it on my desk at home, and it shows a tent in a snowstorm in downtown Toronto. It was made by a Toronto photographer, and the caption reads, "You can't be lazy or stupid to survive on the street." You know, and some of the stories I hear from some of these people is just incredible what they have to go through and what they went through to become on the street, you know, to be on the street. Not a lot of people who are on the street have had great lives up to that point. So that's something I always take into consideration. I wanted to highlight a couple other people. This gentleman, for example, while he looks kind of rough and maybe even a little scary, he is like the nicest guy. When he came here to see the show with his uncle, and every time I see him, I still see him on the street occasionally, and he always brings it up and is so happy. When I first saw him, he ran up to me and gave me a big hug after the show. He was so happy and proud that he was seen. These two here are a couple, and I haven't seen them in at least a couple weeks, but they're regulars in the neighborhood. They are always very friendly. I never see them drunk or high or anything. They're always together, and they always have a shopping cart full of all their belongings. And as this gentleman says, because a lot of the people I offer them cards, they don't even ask. Gift cards I'm talking about. And like this guy says, he doesn't ask for money, they work for it. And what he means by that is they basically collect bottles and cans. You'll see a lot of can collectors in the city, and that's how they survive. They always have their shopping cart full of their belongings and also stuffed full of cans. And I'd also like to add, well, I do believe they are sleeping on the street. Not everybody is always on the street. Some people, what I would call semi-homeless, but still it's homeless, in that they may be couch surfing. I knew one guy who unfortunately is no longer with us, who used to sleep on a person's couch, and he would charge them $25 a night. This person, $25 a night to sleep on his couch. So imagine coming up with that on a weekly basis just to make it. And if he didn't show up with the $25, the person wouldn't let him in the building. So that's another reason that he used to collect cans. Bill?
Not all of our neighbors are from the immediate vicinity. This woman was from the Southwest, New Mexico, and she was attempting to get to Toronto and didn't realize she needed a passport, and was sleeping rough in Fireman's Park over here until she gathered enough resources to get back to the Southwest. There's another neighbor from Fireman's Park that we met in Fireman's Park.
A retired vet.
A veteran,
There's
U.S.
There's a
veteran.
lot of veterans on the street.
And we had an interesting conversation with him. I see him almost every Tuesday when we give out lunches. And he greeted us in song. He sang us a hymn called "I'm a Soldier in the Army of the Lord," which is one I don't know, but I mean, there were a lot of people who did not want to participate for whatever reason, but the ones who did really embraced the idea and us and greeted us as friends. This fellow lives summers in the park, and he's a regular parishioner here. He comes to services almost every Sunday.
You know, we're in a church, and Bill and I had mentioned a couple of people come to church, and that one thing that's interesting is 9 times out of 10 when I'm speaking to people on the street, they say, "God bless you," to me, you know, and I think that's just incredible, and I find it very moving that I'm receiving a blessing from them in return. But I just wanted to point out a couple things. So one, the couples we made photos of, we did them separately and we also did them together. So here's a couple Bill had talked about earlier. And, you know, there's often, it's very difficult to live on the street, but there's also joy. One guy told me the other day when he was telling me he was at this show, and this is a person who lives on the street. The one guy I talked about earlier, he told me what people don't see is that there's still love on the street, that they often help each other out. That's not always the case, of course. There's bad stuff that happens too. I'm not trying to elevate people any more than anyone else or brush over the fact that there's bad stuff that happens, but just in general, there's good things too, and they're humans just like you and I. I wanted to point out this gentleman here. I only met him twice, and the second time was actually on that day. And when I took his photo, he made a point of, I forget what his dog's name was.
His dog's name is Nala.
Nala. And he really wanted to make sure that Nala was in the photo because he loved her so much.
I met him one day after we met him on, and you did the portrait.
Yeah.
And he had just come back from Rochester.
Right.
He had found some kind of short-term work in Rochester.
Oh, nice.
And had taken the bus to take the work that was offered. So again, there are people who are willing to work when they're given the opportunity, and when there's a job that meets their skill level.
I would just like to add something else, and this is just kind of a technical thing. So when you take a person's portrait, the thing that you always want in focus is their eyes. It could be any other part of the portrait could be out of focus, but you want to have their eyes in focus. So doing that, taking this, like when I take pictures of people, I always want them at the same, but I wanted that at the same with the dog too, so that I could get both of their eyes in focus. And it was funny because when I told this gentleman that I needed to have his dog at the same level as him, he brought him up and his dog kept licking his face. I couldn't get a good picture of him initially because his dog kept licking his face because I brought him up to him.
More love on the street.
Yeah. So Bill and I have finished this project, but it's an ongoing project. Just because the photos are up doesn't mean we've stopped. Bill engages with the homeless through the church here, and I still do on a daily basis. I still hand out gift cards every day. I have a pocket full with me always, and if anybody would like to contribute, they would contact me through my Facebook page, which is called Urban Simplicity, and there will also be a link at the bottom of this YouTube page, and I would reach out back to you and give you an address where you could send the gift cards, because homelessness has always been with us. It's not going away, and if anything, it's become more, in our country and worldwide.
I'd just add that next time you see someone on the street, find a way to acknowledge them and acknowledge their humanity, because in most ways, they're a lot like you and I. And I'd like to also thank Joe for coming down for the interview today and for all the work he did to make this a reality. And we're anticipating doing one about immigrants to our community next year. So look forward to that.